Have you ever wondered how dice makers are able to make sets of dice that look like they've captured a little galaxy and put it inside their polyhedral dice set? How we're able to create little nebulas, pockets of space dust, stars, and sometimes even black holes? Then you've come to the right place. Today, I am going to show you how I make my galaxy dice. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make my very favorite type of dice to make. I love that I had decided to start with this before I even posted the giveaway last week, but a bunch of you did say that you wanted to know how to make galaxy dice, so I'm really excited I'd already made this decision. To get started, it's always a really good idea just to line up all the supplies you're gonna need for your pour. When I do my galaxy pours, I don't have any hard and fast rules about what material I'm using, but in general, I use a translucent element, a glitter element, and an opaque element, so that's what you saw there. I had a pink and teal alcohol ink, I had some blue glitter, and then I had a black sparkling mica powder that I have just been obsessed with lately. It's actually what we made the giveaway set out of. I start by pouring my resin into these smaller mixing cups. I always pour the resin first because I want to make sure that I know I'm not pouring two parts of the same thing. So in almost every case, I remember to pour the resin first and then I pour the hardener second. And I also will even move these to a different shelf after I use them just to make extra super sure that I am not doing the same part twice. I actually never have, but I thought I have multiple times and it's always been really scary. So it's really good idea to just keep track of exactly which part you poured first to make sure that you don't end up with a big mushy pile of resin that's never going to cure and a nightmare for yourself because cleaning out those molds would not be fun. Now, most of this pour is pretty much at normal speed. There's a couple parts that were at 1.5 speed, like me showing you the materials I was going to use and some other things that just get a little tedious. Parts of this mixing process, though, are actually quite sped up because it's just really monotonous to watch somebody stir resin for 5 minutes. But you will see when it's all mixed up, I also poured some of the mixed resin into those smaller cups that I used to measure from the bigger cup that I used to mix. And basically the reason I do this is to make sure all of my resin cures properly. If I have just the mixing cups that I used to measured sitting there separately, never having had fully cured resin in them, they're always going to be filled with either hardener or resin and they will not cure and you're gonna have to clean them out yourself. So for me, it's just a lot easier to take some of that mixed resin, give it a nice swirl, and make sure everything is going to cure, no matter what cup it came from. Now, this next part, the Mylar, I didn't mention this in the material section. I do think it's optional for galaxy pours. I really like using Mylar, and since this was the first set I made with this new dice mold, I really wanted to include it. But I do not think it's a necessity for galaxy pours. You can absolutely get a similar effect using just the elements I've mentioned, which is a translucent, an opaque, and a glitter. So when I do work with Mylar, I normally cut it first, and I didn't do that today. As you probably noticed, it was getting stuck to my gloves. Resin is super sticky, so if you think about it, cut your Mylar before you pour the resin because otherwise it's just gonna get stuck everywhere. Also, most dice makers mix their resin and then dip the Mylar in it. I don't do that because the resin I use is very, very thin and I find the process of dipping Mylar to be very, very messy. But if you are a beginner especially, you should definitely dip your Mylar strips into resin before putting it in the mold. It actually saves time and you're gonna see that in a minute, but it can be a lot messier. Also, if you're working with a thicker resin or a higher viscosity resin, you're 100% gonna wanna do it because your dice pour probably won't be successful if you don't. I can get away with it because my resin is so thin. So here you see me just mixing in these colors. I have this beautiful pink, my favorite teal, and then this opaque black mica powder, which does have a touch of glitter to it, although I am going to add additional glitter to this pour because as far as I'm concerned, you can't have a galaxy pour without all of the stars in the sky. So I go a little crazy on the glitter. If I don't think I've used enough pigment, I add a little bit more right there as I'm mixing. This isn't like a tried and true measurement. I don't know exactly how much alcohol ink I use every single day. Each pour is always going to be slightly different, and I'm going to just add the drops and see what it looks like. And if I'm not satisfied, I'm going to add a little bit more. So you've seen I've mixed in that beautiful blue glitter into the pink. I thought the blue would look best in the pink. I actually thought it might get lost if I mixed it into the teal. So that's why I made that decision. Once I am ready to pour, I just pull out my mold, which has already been stuffed with the Mylar. Again, if you're a beginner, you should not do it this way. And if I had really been thinking critically, I wouldn't have done it this way either for this video, but I just forgot. Here I am pouring at normal speed. This is not sped up at all. This is how slow I'm going. I really want to make sure that I don't get any bubbles trapped in this Mylar. Here I am just replacing a bit of Mylar that got lost. I noticed when I went to pour the coin. So here I am doing the very tedious part, which is mixing the Mylar into the resin. And this is actually why I said that if you dip your Mylar in resin first, you're actually going to save time. By doing it this way, it probably takes me an extra 4 to 5 minutes every pour because I only pour in a little bit of resin, mix in the Mylar, see if there's enough resin. In this case, there was not. So I had to slowly add in a little bit more. Again, stir it around. There's not enough resin, so I'm gonna wanna add more and just keep going like that until I make sure that the Mylar is sufficiently coated before I add my next color. And this is why if you just wanted to skip all of this and dunk your Mylar in resin first, it would not be a bad idea. Again, it might just be a lot messier, and that's the one thing I always try to avoid because I'm a pretty messy dice maker when I'm not trying to. You don't see it in this video because I edited it out, but I was wiping down this surface every 5 seconds to make this video look good. The second color I reached for was the opaque black. I like doing the opaque after the first translucent, but also because this black is so dark, it just seemed like the perfect time to do it. You could also do like an opaque purple, or your pink could be opaque. It really doesn't matter. It's all about how you want to do it. I reached for the pink third. Again, I pour very, very slowly, especially when I'm using an inclusion like Mylar, and I also want to make sure that there's some color separation. Now, I decided to go back for the teal because I didn't want this set to be too overwhelmingly black. I decided to go back and just finish off for the black where it might be needed. I still had some of the translucent colors and the mold wasn't completely full, so at this point, this is completely random. I actually love doing galaxy pours in a random method like this. I think if you do the exact same alternation of colors, it's gonna look a lot more uniformed, which might not be super authentic to what a galaxy might actually look like. Here I am just stirring the resin some more because when you don't coat your Mylar, this is how you have to do it. It's also not a bad idea to stir it slightly when you're finished because it will make everything mixed. Now, as always, I pop the bubbles before I put on the lid just to make sure I'm eliminating as many surface bubbles as possible in case the pressure pot can't get them all. I like to apply firm but even pressure, and I do go very slowly. You don't want to apply too much pressure all at once because then you're really running the risk of creating voids in your dice. So it's good to be slow and take your time and apply even pressure. When it was time to demold this dice, I actually discovered something rather disappointing about this set, but I decided to still go through with this video because I think there's something really important that can be learned here. As you might be able to tell from looking at this set, something seems a little bit off, and when you take a closer look, you will actually be able to see that the tops of the dice appear kind of brown. Why did this happen when I didn't use any brown? Well, this is a phenomenon that is called resin burning, or I guess the alcohol ink is technically what burns, but resin gets really, really, really hot when it cures, and sometimes alcohol ink can't take the temperature and it will literally burn the ink, turn it brown, and make it sort of opaque. This is most commonly an issue with purple alcohol ink, which you will notice I did not use in this dice set. And when flipping through it, you can still clearly see that the pink is visible. So I actually think it was the teal alcohol ink that burnt, which is so strange because I've never had that happen before. Luckily, this is actually still a super beautiful set of dice when you actually look at photos from telescopes of nebulas in space. I always think of the very famous image that the Hubble captured of the Pillars of Creation, which was also recently re-photographed by the NASA Webb telescope. If you look at photos of that area, there is a lot of thick opaque brown space stuff. And luckily, because of that imagery, this set is actually still super functional and usable, and it is still a galaxy pore. But we're gonna have to do another video on galaxy pores in the future to make sure we get a really authentic representation of what it would look like when one of the elements of your dice set doesn't burn and fail. But I still wanted to show you this because I wanted you to know that this is absolutely something that can happen with dice making, and that's why a lot of times I do use resin dye instead of alcohol ink, because resin dye isn't subject to those same flaws that the alcohol ink has, and it's never going to burn with the high temperatures from the resin curing. So something to keep in mind. Resin dye is also translucent and a really good alternative. It's time to move on to something I know you're all very excited about. I am going to announce the winner of the giveaway, who is going to end up with this beautiful black and purple dice set. I want to thank all 43 of you who entered this giveaway. I did select a winner at random, and that winner ended up being Bardic Information. So a huge congratulations to you on winning this dice set. I will reply to your comment just to make sure you're aware that you won, but you do need to reach out to me within 48 hours. You can send me an email at artemisdiceco@outlook.com, and we will coordinate how I can send you your dice. Thank you everyone so much for watching. If you liked this video, please click like. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, please subscribe. And as always, please feel free to leave me a comment with any and all questions you have about making galaxy dice, and check back on YouTube Shorts in the next couple of days, because I am going to post the fully polished and inked up galaxy pour dice that you just saw me make.